because I had started talking about my great grandmother, Sylvia, Sylvia Jackson. She was born in 1858. She was reared by I shouldn't have said that. She was, like, I shouldn't have said that word, the R word. But she was, like, how it was told to me from my auntie was, the European had his way with it. Because at that time, Europeans had their way with black women. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that really doesn't encapsulate what happened to her. Like, you know what I mean? That R word is the only thing that really describes what happened, because she was messed up after that. You know what I'm saying? But she was impregnated. She was only 16 years old. And, so there wasn't, at that time, in 1874, there was nobody to call, the police, there was no justice to be had, from a black person that had a complaint about a white person, you know what I'm saying? So, and from the, stories that I've heard and information that I have is that it was, she was never the same, you know what I mean? It really affected her, She never got married, you know what I mean? I don't even think she had any other children. I think her daughter, the child that was birthed out of that horrible instance, she was a mulatto, and her name was Elizabeth. She, from what I understand, she was just a beautiful person inside and out. My mother never said anything bad about her. Like, it was just always loving. My mother glowed when she was talking about her, and that was her grandmother. But her grandma, great grandma Sylvia, and her daughter Elizabeth, they lived together. Until Grandma Sylvia passed. Even when Grandma Elizabeth got married, Grandma Sylvia stayed, in the home with them, And so she married my great grandfather Willie. His name was Willie Day. He was living in North Carolina. So his moms had like 6 kids, and they were from different fathers. So what happened was, he went to the shop, and a European Caucasian said something slick to him about his moms. You know what I mean? Having kids, and you know what I mean? It was something disrespectful. So how the story goes is, Willie, great grandpa Willie, whooped the white man's, behind. You know what I'm saying? And so, and left town immediately. So the story goes, he left him for dead, and then took off immediately. Like, he left town. You know what I'm saying? And he left North Carolina and went up north to Virginia. He settled up in Virginia. And so while he was in Virginia, him and, I don't know how the story goes, but that's where he met my great grandmother Elizabeth. So Elizabeth and Grandpa Willie, Elizabeth Jackson, and Grandpa Willie Day, great Grandpa Willie Day, they, united. And man and wife had 18 children. Had 18 children. Well, there wasn't, birth control then, so, people had big families, and it was necessary because, they were doing farm work. And, my grandfather, my great grandfather, Willie Day, he obviously changed his name to Howard. His last name was Howard. And it's funny because, like, growing up, so that was my grandmother's, that was my mother's grandmother, right? And so the Howards is like they would be considered kind of bougie. I ain't gonna lie, they would be considered bougie. And then on my mother's father's side, so that's my mother's grandparents on my mother on her mother's side that had 18 kids. They were kind of bougie. Not my grandmother. She wasn't bougie. She was kind of ghetto. She was the darkest of them all, because they all light skin. Like I said, that's how the light skin came in our family, was when Grandma Sylvia, the European had his way with her, and so that's where the white, blood came from. So anyway, my grandmother, she feisty, she's the youngest out of 18 kids, and she was the darkest, and a lot of my uncles, I didn't really know too much her brothers and sisters, because they was coming up, they were like Uncle Bill, Uncle this, Uncle Charles, but I didn't know them. I knew them, but it was like they were older, and and I didn't really hear too many stories from my mom's about them, except that she just loved them. But her father's side, the Day side, now that's the ghetto side. They was from Florida, and they moved up north to Rochester, New York. And when him and my grandma Mabel Howard married Roy Day, my mother and father's parents, and they had a family, created a family, started a family in Avon, New York. All right. So getting back to the Howard, that I already said all of that to say about the Howards. The Howards was kind of bougie, right? And I ain't gonna say bougie like that's a bad thing. They were well educated, And so sometimes educated black people think that that they're better than non-educated blacks. And that was evident in the selection. Like they were saying, most of the educated people voted for college degree people. I ain't gonna say educated, because a lot of them is miseducated. But the college degree people voted for Kamala Harris, and the ones who didn't have college degrees voted for Trump. So it's always been a class divide. But anyway, my that side of my family is they accomplished a lot. Like the Howards, through Aunt Corinne and her side. I forget her Chuck. I want to say Chuck Mitchell and all of them, Makita Mitchell. But anyway, that whole side, they they were responsible. They founded the Sun Gallery. It's a black museum in Washington D.C. So they, my my grandma Mabel, my mother's mother, she was very smart, educated. She was married up until about 43. When she was 43, she got divorced. She sent herself back to school because Grandpa Dave was an alcoholic, right? And so, and I think at that time, a lot of black men, they were overqualified. He was a certified and educated in the field of architecture, but he couldn't get a job. They weren't hiring black architects at that job, at that time. So he ended up getting the job at Kodak. Remember at the Kodak film, where they were The headquarters was in Rochester, New York, and he had to get a job as a as a janitor. You know what I'm saying? And it probably messed with him. You know what I mean? But anyway, he ended up as an alcoholic and abusive, and you know what I mean, like caused hell in the family. So by the time my grandmother was 43, she she got a divorce, went on her own. I think she moved down to Maryland, right from Rochester. But she had an apartment living in the city of Rochester, and moved down to Silver Springs, Maryland. So we used to always go down there to see her. And she went to school at 43, graduated, and started working as a teacher's assistant. And beautiful. Like when my mother, I talked about in episode 1, my mother took us out of school to educate us at home and homeschool us and all of that, because she was scared that something would happen to me in the streets and all of that, because of the direction I was headed. My grandmother was one of the only people who stood behind my mom's. Like, everybody else was saying, you crazy, like, what are you doing? Like, like, she went through hell. It wasn't like, like kids, we taking the kids out, oh wow, that's wonderful. You know what I'm saying? They're like, what? And people like, voice their opinion like strong, you know what I'm saying? But going going back to Grandpa Willie, like, you know what I'm saying, we don't care. We don't care what people think. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes we gotta do what we need to do, and that's what allows people to excel. Because if you could be shut down, or somebody can dissuade you and change your mind and your opinion or something, then like, success is going to evade that person. You know what I'm saying? But the person who's like, stays focused, flexible. That's one thing that I've heard Russell Simmons say. You gotta be flexible. And that's what it is. That's like with me. That's how I did up with talking into a camera. Flexible. You know what I'm saying? I'm a producer, so I produce. You don't have to be limited to music or short films, or you know what I mean? Like, I'm a creative person, and I don't mind what people think. He crazy, or he shouldn't do that. Like, even with that. Like, when I started this, like, like, the family was like, yo, like, I'm saying? It's like, especially when I started talking about the religion, and it was like, yo, but it was like, yo, this is my truth. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that you, like, wrong, or, like, yo, I wish you the best. But this is, this is my truth. You know what I mean? And it's like, yo, accept it or reject it. You know what I'm saying? Love me or hate me. You know what I mean? But I can't, like, not do something because, somebody not gonna like me, or, like, I can't call on them and depend on them no more. Or, you know what I mean? Like, Allah is the best provider. You know what I'm saying? And I'm always gonna be good. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I don't mean to get off topic, but that's how the like, the European blood got into our, into our blood. You know what I'm saying? And a little story of what went on with the growing up.
P Funk City G.